Hey everyone, welcome back. Ready to explore some seriously mind-bending ideas?
I'm ready when you are.
Awesome. Today we're doing a deep dive into Kenneth Grant's magical revival. We'll be working with excerpts from the book itself, and this is going to be a wild ride. Buckle up.
Sounds intense.
Grant's exploring this idea of a resurgence of pre-Christian knowledge, specifically something he calls the cult of Shaitan.
Okay, already sounds intriguing.
And before anyone jumps to conclusions, it's not about devil worship as you might typically think. It's much more complex than that. Grant connects this revival to figures like Aleister Crowley, who claimed to receive the Book of the Law from a supernatural entity named Aiwaz.
Right, Crowley, fascinating and controversial figure.
Exactly. We're going to be talking about ancient Egyptian symbolism, sexual magic, this pursuit of solar consciousness. He even talks about stars as potent vaginal vibrations. Yeah, we're going there.
Whoa, okay, you definitely have my attention.
I knew you'd appreciate that. But luckily, you're here to help us navigate this labyrinth of esoteric knowledge. So one of the things that struck me was Grant's idea that the true gnosis, that ancient wisdom, was deliberately suppressed and distorted over time. He suggests that we can still find traces of it in Egyptian texts and practices like voodoo. What are your thoughts on this idea of a hidden wisdom being intentionally buried?
Well, it's interesting how Grant links this suppression to the rise of Christianity. The way certain practices, particularly anything related to sex magic, were demonized.
Yeah, it's like a clash between older, more earth-based traditions and the growing influence of Christianity, right?
Exactly. A lot of those pre-Christian practices ended up labeled as heretical or even demonic.
So basically what was once considered sacred became taboo.
Exactly. And that leads us to that intriguing concept you mentioned earlier, stars as vaginal vibrations. This representation of concentrated astral consciousness.
Yeah, that one definitely caught my eye.
It's certainly not your typical spiritual concept.
You can say that again. Can you break this down for us? How does that fit into magical practices?
Absolutely. To understand this, we need to talk about the concept of kalas in tantric thought.
Okay, call us.
Think of them as these units of time, but also subtle essences. Grant actually compares these kalas to something Wilhelm Reich discovered, this radiating energy called orgone present in bions. What he's suggesting is that both point to the existence of subtle energies that we can tap into, especially through practices like sexual magic.
Wait, so you're saying that, according to Grant, women have a unique ability to tap into this cosmic energy through their sexuality?
It is a pretty radical concept, right?
It definitely challenges a lot of conventional thinking about both sexuality and spirituality.
It does. The idea is that by consciously directing this energy, you can activate and amplify the chakras in the body. You essentially become a conduit for these cosmic forces.
Oh, okay. I see where he's going with this.
Think of it this way. The chakras are like these spinning wheels of energy, and these stars, these vibrations, are the fuel that makes them spin faster.
Okay, that imagery helps a lot.
It's not just about physical pleasure. It's about harnessing this energy for spiritual growth.
And we can't talk about Kenneth Grant without addressing the elephant in the room, Aleister Crowley.
A complex character, to say the least.
Crowley was a complex and controversial figure. Grant dives into his reception of the Book of the Law, his identification with the beast 666, and his, let's just say, liberal use of sexual magic. How does Grant fit Crowley into this idea of a magical revival?
Grant places Crowley as a key figure in reviving the cult of Shaitan, but he also tries to provide a more balanced view of Crowley's work.
Right, because Crowley has kind of a mixed reputation.
He does. Grant really emphasizes Crowley's goal of attaining solar consciousness, basically a state of heightened awareness and spiritual enlightenment.
So reaching a higher level of consciousness.
Yes. Crowley believed this involved a balance between different spiritual forces, which are often personified as gods and goddesses.
Okay, so it's not just about one force, but a balance between them.
Exactly. And this is where things get even more interesting. Crowley had a complicated relationship with his follower, Charles Stansfield Jones, also known as Frater Achad.
Oh, right, I've heard of him.
Achad claimed to have become the living proof of the Book of the Law, which adds another layer to this whole idea of channeling external forces.
Okay, so we've got hidden knowledge, cosmic energy, and now channeling. This is getting really interesting.
It does, doesn't it? And there's more. Grant keeps coming back to this theme of Shaitan, an ancient Sumerian deity. He connects it to the star Sirius, the concept of the hidden god. It's a recurring theme that's definitely worth exploring.
Absolutely. But before we get lost in the stars, can you shed some light on Shaitan for us? What's the historical and mythological background?
Well, Shaitan has deep roots in ancient Mesopotamian mythology. Grant traces the connections back to the Egyptian god Set, who represented chaos and the untamed forces of nature.
Set. Wasn't he seen as a purely evil god?
It's interesting because Set wasn't always seen as purely evil. He was a complex and powerful figure, representing both creation and destruction.
Ah, okay. So it's not a simple good versus evil situation.
Not at all. As the worship of Set spread, the name evolved into Shaitan and took on different meanings in various cultures. Now, here's where Crowley comes back in. He identified Iwaz, the entity who he claimed to have channeled the Book of the Law from, as a form of Shaitan.
Really? So Crowley is connecting this ancient force to his own experiences.
Exactly, suggesting a modern revival of this ancient and often misunderstood deity.
So according to Crowley, this ancient force is making a comeback.
That's the claim. It raises a lot of questions about the nature of spiritual power and what forces are at play in the universe.
Definitely a lot to think about. Now, Grant also gets into some intense territory with blood magic, talking about how blood can be used to materialize spirits.
Right, blood as a connection to the life force.
Exactly. I know this can be a sensitive topic, so maybe you can walk us through the historical and anthropological context of blood rituals. What's the significance of blood in these practices?
Well, blood rituals have existed in many cultures throughout history, often symbolizing the life force, the potent energy that blood represents. But it's crucial to understand the difference between this symbolic use of blood and the harmful practices that some associate with it, like vampirism or the misuse of these forces.
Okay, so there's a responsible way to approach this and a not-so-responsible way.
Absolutely. Grant cautions against approaching blood magic without the proper knowledge and understanding. He emphasizes the need for responsible and ethical practices because you're dealing with powerful energies.
Yeah, I can see how things could go wrong pretty quickly if you're not careful.
Exactly. It's not something to be taken lightly. There's a real potential for harm if those energies are misused.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
We're talking about forces that demand respect and careful consideration. Now, let's switch gears a bit. Grant talks about the importance of something called the death posture, a technique developed by Austin Osman Spare. It's meant to achieve a state of complete emptiness to facilitate magical creation. Can you explain exactly what the death posture is and how Grant describes its potential applications?
The death posture, it might sound intimidating, but it's essentially a technique for inducing a deep trance-like state, similar to things like meditation.
So silencing the mind to access deeper levels of awareness.
Exactly. The goal is to quiet the conscious mind and access deeper levels of awareness. Grant compares the death posture to the concept of the void in Eastern philosophies, where emptiness is seen as the source of all creation.
Okay, emptiness is a starting point for creation. That's interesting.
He believes that by mastering this technique, you can tap into a wellspring of creative power and achieve profound magical results.
Like clearing the mental slate to make space for something new.
Exactly.
That's a powerful idea. But how do you actually achieve this death posture?
Well, it involves more than just contorting your body into a certain shape. It's about achieving a state of total vacuity, completely emptying the self, which can then be filled with the creative power of the magical will.
Wow, that sounds intense and potentially dangerous if you're not properly prepared.
You're right, it's not something to be attempted without guidance and careful preparation.
All right, we've covered a lot of ground already, but I'm eager to hear more about Grant's ideas on the Aeon of Horus and this potential for cosmic change. We'll dive into those next time when we continue exploring Kenneth Grant's magical revival. For now, I'd love to hear your initial thoughts on all of this. Is there anything that's resonating with you? Any burning questions? We'd love to hear your insights. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep. Welcome back. Ready for more of Grant's mind-blowing ideas?
Oh, I'm definitely intrigued to hear where he goes next.
Okay, so we left off talking about the death posture, this idea of reaching a state of complete emptiness. Grant also connects this to some provocative ideas about sexuality.
He does. One of his key points is that the death posture is more than just a physical thing.
More than just a position, right?
Yeah, more of a state of mind.
A way to transcend the limitations of the ego.
Exactly.
You're not just contorting your body into a pretzel, it's about.
Right. You're trying to reach this state of total emptiness, like a clearing of the self.
And that emptiness then becomes the space for
the creative power of the magical will to emerge.
I see. So it's almost like hitting the reset button on your mind.
Yeah,
making room for something new.
that's a great way to put it.
It reminds me of the idea of beginner's mind
Hmm.
in Zen Buddhism, approaching things with fresh perspective.
That's a really good connection.
No preconceived notions.
The death posture, in a way, is creating that kind of mental space, allowing for new possibilities.
Okay, I get that.
Yeah,
But Grant also ties the death posture to a new form of sexuality.
he does.
What's he getting at there?
Well, he's arguing that our typical understanding of sexuality, focused on, things like procreation or pleasure, he says it's too limited.
Okay, so where does he go with that?
He proposes a much more expansive view of sexuality. He sees it as a powerful force for transformation,
Okay.
a way to tap into those primal energies of creation.
Wow. That's pretty different from how most people think about sexuality.
It is.
He's really pushing the boundaries here.
He is challenging a lot of societal norms,
Ah.
religious beliefs even.
So, in a way, he's saying sexuality can be a path to spiritual awakening.
You could interpret it that way, yeah. He sees it as a source of energy, this potent source that can be harnessed for personal and spiritual transformation.
Okay, now speaking of challenging norms, Grant doesn't shy away from Crowley's more controversial teachings either,
Right.
like his emphasis on the Scarlet Woman,
That's definitely a concept that raises some eyebrows.
to put it mildly. So who is the Scarlet Woman, according to Grant? Is this a real person or more like a symbol?
She's an archetype, a symbol of feminine power, really,
Okay.
and this kind of liberating force of sexuality.
I could see how that would rub people the wrong way, though.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Crowley often used very provocative language and imagery when he talked about the Scarlet Woman.
Yeah.
But Grant argues that Crowley's intention was to reclaim the feminine principle, to take it back from all those patriarchal structures that had suppressed and demonized it for centuries.
So it's about restoring a balance then.
Exactly, between those masculine and feminine energies. Grant emphasizes the need to move beyond that dualistic thinking
Okay.
and to recognize the interconnectedness of these seemingly opposite forces.
The Scarlet Woman as a catalyst then.
You could say that. She challenges us to confront our preconceived notions about gender and sexuality.
It's about embracing that full spectrum of human experience.
Exactly. Breaking free from those limitations, embracing who we are, all the complexities.
Now, Grant also explores the concept of blood magic
Yeah.
and the role of blood in certain magical practices. How does he approach this topic?
Well, he's very careful to distinguish between its responsible applications and the irresponsible ones. He points out that blood has been used symbolically in tons of cultures.
Right.
Throughout history, really, representing that life force, the vital essence.
Okay, so it's not about literally spilling blood or doing harmful rituals.
Right. It's about tapping into the power that blood symbolizes. He emphasizes approaching this with knowledge, with respect,
Makes sense.
understanding those potential risks.
You're dealing with some pretty powerful energies here.
You are. It's not something to be taken lightly.
Speaking of potent forces, Grant seems particularly fascinated by this ancient Sumerian deity, Shaitan,
Yeah.
who he connects to the star Sirius.
Hmm.
What's the story there?
Well, Shaitan plays a central role in Grant's exploration of this magical revival.
Right.
He sees Shaitan as an embodiment of this primal energy, untamed, often misunderstood, demonized by later religious traditions.
So this isn't about worshiping the devil in the Christian sense.
No, not at all. Grant is interested in Shaitan's connection to the ancient mysteries, the pre-Christian gnosis. He sees Shaitan as a force for liberation.
A challenge to conventional thought.
Exactly. Pushing beyond those boundaries of what's considered acceptable, good even.
Okay, that's starting to make sense.
It's about questioning those boundaries, exploring the full spectrum of human potential, even the aspects that make us uncomfortable.
And what about the star Sirius? What's its significance?
Sirius is the brightest star in the night sky, often called the dog star. It had huge importance in ancient Egyptian mythology,
Right.
where it was associated with the goddess Isis, the annual flooding of the Nile.
So it's a star with a rich history, powerful symbolism.
It is. Grant connects Sirius to Shaitan, suggesting a link between this ancient deity and those cosmic forces that shape our world.
Okay.
He sees Sirius as this gateway to hidden knowledge, this source of immense power that can be accessed through magical practice.
Almost like a cosmic beacon, guiding us towards something beyond our understanding.
That's a great way to put it. He's inviting us to expand our awareness, question our assumptions, explore those mysteries that lie beyond the limits of conventional thought.
And maybe, by doing that, we can tap into these hidden forces, create a future that's more aligned with our true potential.
It's a powerful idea.
It is. This is all pretty mind-blowing stuff.
It is.
From the death posture and the Scarlet Woman
Yeah.
to blood magic and the Star series, we've covered a lot of ground.
We have.
But we still have more to explore. Grant's ideas about the Eon of Horus, this potential for cosmic change. We'll dive into all of that next time when we continue our deep dive into Kenneth Grant's magical revival. Until then, keep those minds open.
Yes.
And keep exploring. Okay, so we're back for the final part of our deep dive into Kenneth Grant's magical revival.
It's been quite a journey so far.
It really has. We've gone from suppressed gnosis and the cult of Shaitan to the death posture and the Scarlet Woman.
A lot to unpack.
But there's one more thread I want to pull on before we wrap things up. Grant suggests that Crowley believed the Book of the Law actually contains clues about future events,
Interesting.
even hinting at a connection to extraterrestrial intelligence.
Wow. Okay, now we're getting into some really fascinating territory. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, it's definitely one of the more intriguing and maybe controversial aspects of Grant's interpretation of Crowley.
Yeah.
He's suggesting the Book of the Law isn't just a spiritual text, but a roadmap to the future,
Okay.
encoded with information about humanity's evolution, even our eventual contact with beings from other planets.
So it's like a cosmic code just waiting to be cracked? That's pretty wild.
It is pretty wild. And Grant highlights Crowley's fascination with science, his attempts to connect his magical insights with scientific discoveries. He suggests Crowley actually saw magic as a way to access knowledge beyond the reach of conventional science.
Really?
Things like the true nature of the universe,
Yeah.
the existence of extraterrestrial life.
So he's saying there's a connection between science and magic, deeper than we currently understand.
Exactly. It's a pretty radical idea.
It is. It's a question that has intrigued people for a long time. Occultists, philosophers.
It makes you wonder if we're missing out on a whole realm of knowledge because we're stuck in our conventional way of thinking.
It's definitely a possibility. Grant challenges us to expand our horizons, to consider perspectives that, might seem a little out there.
So let's say, for argument's sake, Crowley is right.
Okay.
And this contact with extraterrestrial intelligence is in our future. What does Grant have to say about that? Is he optimistic? Cautious?
Well, he presents a pretty balanced view, actually. He acknowledges both the potential benefits and the risks of such contact.
Yeah.
He suggests that if we can approach this encounter with open minds, a willingness to transcend our limitations,
Right.
it could lead to a new era, spiritual evolution, a cosmic understanding.
It's a huge opportunity, but it comes with a lot of responsibility.
Exactly. He also cautions that if we approach this contact with fear, with greed, with a desire to dominate, well, it could lead to conflict, even disaster.
It's not just about technological advancement then. It's a fundamental shift in consciousness.
Right. We have to evolve as a species to be ready for that kind of encounter.
It's a pretty daunting thought, but also incredibly exciting. Makes you wonder what our potential really is.
And that's the question that Grant leaves us with, isn't it? He's inviting us to explore that potential, to push the boundaries of what we think is possible, to embrace the unknown.
With a sense of wonder and responsibility? Well, I think I've done a pretty good job of unpacking Kenneth Grant's magical revival.
We've covered a lot.
We have explored some dense, often challenging ideas, but hopefully you've come away with a better understanding of Grant's unique perspective.
His views on magic, spirituality, the future of humanity.
If you're eager to learn more, I highly encourage you to check out the source material yourself. There's always more to discover. And who knows, maybe you'll have some insights of your own to share. Until next time, keep exploring.
Yes, keep those minds open.
Keep questioning and keep diving deep into the mysteries of existence.